Welcome to the FAQ Shack, the show where we tackle your most pressing questions about the world around us. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most powerful and, let's be honest, controversial topics out there: nuclear power. We actually received this fantastic question from a listener named Alex from Michigan, and it really gets right to the heart of the matter. On the screen, Alex asks, I keep hearing that nuclear power is a solution to climate change, but isn't it also incredibly dangerous? What's the real story? It's a perfect question. Is nuclear our best hope for a clean energy future, or are the risks just way too high? Today, we're going to break it all down for you.
So here's our game plan. We'll start by looking at the incredible power of nuclear energy. Then we'll confront those really serious risks, waste and meltdowns. After that, we'll tackle the massive economic questions. And finally, we're going to peek into the future.
Okay, let's dive right in. To really get a handle on this debate, you first have to understand the incredible promise of nuclear power, and that all starts with some pretty amazing science.
So almost all the nuclear power in the world today comes from a process called nuclear fission. Now, that sounds complicated, but the basic idea is kind of simple. You take a really heavy atom like uranium and you split it. That's it. And when it splits, it releases just an enormous amount of energy as heat.
Now, it's really important not to get fission confused with its cousin, fusion. As you can see here, they're total opposites. Fission, on the left, that's what we do now. We split heavy atoms. Fusion, on the right, is what the sun does. It smashes light atoms together. Now, fusion is the dream, right? It promises even more energy with way less radioactive waste, but, well, we'll get to why it's still just a dream a little later on. Okay, so here is the #1 argument for nuclear power. This is the big one. Over its entire life, and that includes everything from mining the uranium to building the plant, nuclear energy produces only about 12 grams of CO2 equivalent for every kilowatt hour of electricity. To put that in perspective, that's right down there with wind power. It is an incredibly low-carbon source of energy. And check this out. This just blows my mind. The energy density is unbelievable. A single big nuclear plant needs maybe 20 or 30 tons of fuel for an entire year. A coal plant making the same amount of power? It needs over 3 million tons of coal. That means nuclear plants have a tiny, tiny land footprint compared to pretty much anything else. But of course, that immense power comes with some equally immense risks. And you can't talk about nuclear energy without confronting the dark side of the atom. The fear that people have is rooted in some very real, very scary history. This timeline shows the 3 most infamous accidents. You've got 3 Mile Island in '79, Chernobyl in '86, and Fukushima in 2011. And look, while accidents like these are statistically very rare, when they happen, the consequences are absolutely catastrophic. They've left a long, dark shadow over the entire industry. Chernobyl was, well, it was the absolute worst-case scenario. A big reason it was so devastating is that the reactor didn't have a proper containment building like most Western plants do. So when it exploded, it just spewed radiation everywhere. Today, the area around it is still a wasteland, a truly haunting reminder of what can go wrong. And here's the thing, even when a plant runs perfectly its entire life, it still creates a huge problem: nuclear waste. The spent fuel rods that come out of the reactor are dangerously radioactive, and they're going to stay that way for thousands, in some cases hundreds of thousands of years. And we still haven't really figured out a permanent solution for where to put all this stuff. So this table really just sums up the whole dilemma, doesn't it? On one side, you have these huge positives: super stable, clean power with almost no greenhouse gases. On the other side, you've got these terrifying negatives, the risk of a disaster and this permanent waste problem that we haven't solved. It's a massive trade-off. And that leads us perfectly into another great listener question, this time from Jenna in Toronto. She asks, if nuclear is so powerful and clean, why aren't we building these plants everywhere? It seems like it should be cheaper. And Jenna, you've hit on what might be the biggest hurdle for nuclear power today. It's not just about safety, it's about the money.
So let's talk about the economics, because to understand why nuclear costs so much, you have to look at where the money actually goes. It's totally different from other kinds of power plants.
This chart really says it all. See that giant bar on the left? That's the construction cost. Almost all the money is spent up front just to build the thing. The actual fuel and running costs are a tiny slice of the pie. Building a modern, super safe nuclear reactor is just an unbelievably expensive and complex job.
And that massive upfront cost creates a huge financial risk. I mean, just look at this example from the VOYGR plant in Georgia. The initial estimate was $14 billion. The final price tag? Over $30 billion. And it was years behind schedule. When you see numbers like that, you can understand why investors get, well, pretty nervous about funding new projects. So with these huge challenges, safety, waste, and the astronomical cost, you might think nuclear is a thing of the past. But there's a new wave of engineers and innovators working on what they hope is the next generation of nuclear tech.
One of the most promising ideas is something called small modular reactors, or SMRs. The concept is pretty cool. Instead of building these gigantic, one-of-a-kind plants on site, what if you could mass-produce smaller, standardized reactors in a factory? The hope is that this could slash construction times and costs, and you can build in even more advanced passive safety features.
And then there's the ultimate moonshot: nuclear fusion. Remember we talked about this? Harnessing the same power that fuels the sun and stars. It's the holy grail, promising almost limitless energy with way less radioactive waste.
But fusion is maybe one of the hardest engineering problems humanity has ever tried to solve. To get it going, you have to create temperatures hotter than the core of the sun. We're talking over 15 million Kelvin. It's just insane. Projects like ITER in France are spending billions and bringing together scientists from all over the world just to try and prove it can even be done.
Which brings us right back to the beginning, back to that central question. Nuclear power presents us with this profound trade-off. On one hand, immense clean energy. On the other, immense risk. So the question for all of us is, in the face of climate change, is that a price we're willing to pay?
So, what do you think? Is it a necessary tool in the fight against climate change, or is it a gamble that's just too risky? We really want to hear your thoughts, so let us know in the comments. And hey, if you've got a big question you want us to tackle next here on the FAQ Shack, drop that down below too. Thanks for watching.